Hello friends, welcome to our story podcast. Let's begin the story. Bus stop. Pipalnagar Part 1 by Ruskin Bond. My balcony was my window on the world. The room itself had only one window, a square hole in the wall crossed by two iron bars. The view from it was rather restricted. If I craned my neck sideways and put my nose to the bars, I could see the end of the building. Below was a narrow courtyard where children played. Across the courtyard, on a level with my room, were three separate windows, belonging to three separate rooms, each window barred in the same way, with iron bars. During the day, it was difficult to see into these rooms. The harsh, cruel sunlight filled the courtyard, making the windows patches of darkness. My room was very small. I had paced about in it so often that I knew its exact measurements. My foot, from heel to toe, was 11 inches long. That made the room just over 15 feet in length. For, when I measured the last foot, my toes turned up against the wall. It wasn't more than 8 feet broad, which meant that two people were the most it could comfortably accommodate. I was the only tenant, but at times I had put up at least 3 friends. 2 on the floor, 2 on the bed. The plaster had been peeling off the walls, and in addition the greasy stains and patches were difficult to hide, though I covered the worst ones with pictures cut out from magazines. Wahida, the Indian actress, successfully blotted out one big patch, and a recent Mr. Universe displayed his muscles from the opposite wall. The biggest stain was all but concealed by a calendar which showed Ganesh, the elephant-headed god, whose blessings were vital to all good beginnings. My belongings were few. A shelf on the wall supported an untidy pile of paperbacks, and a small table in one corner of the room supported the solid weight of my rejected manuscripts and an ancient typewriter which I had obtained on hire. I was 18 years old and a writer. Such a combination would be disastrous enough anywhere, but in India it was doubly so, for there were not many papers to write for and payments were small. In addition, I was very inexperienced and thought what I wrote came from the heart. Only a fraction touched the hearts of editors. Nevertheless, I persevered and was able to earn about 100 rupees a month, barely enough to keep body, soul and typewriter together. There wasn't much else I could do. Without that passport to a job, a university degree, I had no alternative but to accept the classification of self-employed, which was impressive as it included doctors, lawyers, property dealers, and grain merchants, most of whom earned well over 1,000 a month. Haven't you realized that India is bursting with young people trying to pass exams? Asked a journalist friend. It's a desperate matter, this race for academic qualifications. Everyone wants to pass his exam the easy way, without reading too many books or attending more than half a dozen lectures. That's where a smart fellow like you comes in. Why should students wade through 5 volumes of political history when they can buy a few model answer papers at any bookstall? They are helpful, these guest papers. You can write them quickly and flood the market. They'll sell like hot cakes. Who eats hot cakes here? Well, then, hot chapatis. I'll think about it, I said. But the idea repelled me. If I was going to misguide students, I would rather do it by writing second-rate detective stories than by providing them with ready-made answer papers. Besides, I thought it would bore me. The string of my cot needed tightening. The dip in the middle of the bed was so bad that I woke up in the mornings with a stiff back. But I was hopeless at tightening bed strings and would have to wait until one of the boys from the tea shop paid me a visit. I was too long for the cot, anyway, and if my feet didn't stick out at one end, my head lolled over the other. Under the cot was my tin trunk. Apart from my clothes, it contained notebooks, diaries, photographs, scrapbooks, and other odds and ends that form a part of a writer's existence. I did not live entirely alone. During cold or rainy weather, the boys from the tea shop, who normally slept on the pavement, crowded into the room. Apart from them, there were lizards on the walls and ceilings, friends these, and a large rat, definitely an enemy, who got in and out of the window and who sometimes carried away manuscripts and clothing. June nights were the most uncomfortable. Mosquitoes emerged from all the ditches, gullies and ponds to swarm over Pipalnagar. Bugs, finding it uncomfortable inside the woodwork of the cot, scrambled out at night and found their way under the sheet. The lizards wandered listlessly over the walls, impatient for the monsoon rains when they would be able to feast off thousands of insects. Everyone in Pipalnagar was waiting for the cool, quenching relief of the monsoon. I woke every morning at 5 as soon as the first bus moved out of the shed, situated only 20 or 30 yards down the road. I dressed, went down to the tea shop for a glass of hot tea and some buttered toast, and then visited Deep Chand the barber in his shop. At 18, I shaved about 3 times a week. Sometimes I shaved myself. But often, when I felt lazy, Deep Chand shaved me at the special concessional rate of 2 annas. Give my head a good massage. Deep Chand, I said. My brain is not functioning these days. In my latest story there are 3 murders, but it is boring just the same. You must write a good book. And Deep Chand beginning the ritual of the head massage, his fingers squeezing my temples and tugging at my hair roots. Then you can make some money and clear out of Pipalnagar. Delhi is the place to go. Why? I know a man who arrived in Delhi in 1947 with nothing but the clothes he wore and a few rupees. He began by selling thirsty travelers glasses of cold water at the railway station, then he opened a small tea shop. Now he has 2 big restaurants and lives in a house as large as the Prime Minister's. Nobody intended living in Pipalnagar forever. Delhi was the city most aspired to, but as it was 200 miles away, few could afford to travel there. Deep Chand would have shifted his trade to another town if he had had the capital. In Pipalnagar, his main customers were small shopkeepers, factory workers and laborers from the railway station. Here I can charge only 6 annas for a haircut, he lamented. In Delhi I could charge a rupee. For I was walking in the wheat fields beyond the railway tracks when I noticed a boy lying across the footpath, his head and shoulders hidden by the wheat. I walked faster, and when I came near I saw that the boy's legs were twitching. He seemed to be having some kind of fit. The boy's face was white, his legs kept moving, and his hands fluttered restlessly amongst the wheat stalks. "What's the matter?" I said, kneeling down beside him. But he was still unconscious. I ran down the path to a Persian well, and dipping the end of my shirt in a shallow trough of water, soaked it well before returning to the boy. As I sponged his face, the twitching ceased, and though he still breathed heavily, his face was calm and his hands still. He opened his eyes and stared at me, but he didn't really see me. "You have bitten your tongue," I said, wiping a little blood from the corner of his mouth. "Don't worry. I'll stay here with you until you are all right." The boy raised himself and, resting his chin on his knees, he passed his arms around his drawn-up legs. "I'm all right now," he said. "What happened?" I asked, sitting down beside him. "Oh, it is nothing. It often happens. I don't know why. I cannot control it." "Have you been to a doctor?" "Yes. When the fits first started, I went to the hospital. They gave me some pills which I had to take every day. But the pills made me so tired and sleepy that I couldn't work properly. So I stopped taking them. Now this happens once or twice a week. What does it matter? I'm all right when it's over, and I do not feel anything when it happens. He got to his feet, dusting his clothes and smiling at me. He was a slim boy, long-limbed and bony. There was a little fluff on his cheeks and the promise of a mustache. He told me his name was Suraj, that he went to a night school in the city, and that he hoped to finish his high school exams in a few months' time. He was studying hard, he said, and if he passed, he hoped to get a scholarship to a good college. If he failed, there was only the prospect of continuing in Pipalnagar. I noticed a small tray of merchandise lying on the ground. It contained combs and buttons and little bottles of perfume. The tray was made to hang at Suraj's waist, supported by straps that went around his shoulders. All day he walked about Pipalnagar, sometimes covering 10 or 15 miles a day, selling odds and ends to people at their houses. He averaged about 2 rupees a day, which was enough for his food and other necessities. He managed to save about 10 rupees a month for his school fees. He ate regularly at little tea shops, at the stall near the bus stop, under the shady jamun and mango trees. When the jamun fruit was ripe, he would sit in a tree, sucking the sour fruit until his lips were stained purple. There was a small, nagging fear that he might get a fit while sitting on the tree and fall off. But the temptation to eat jamuns was greater than his fear. All this he told me while we walked through the fields towards the bazaar. "Where do you live?" I asked. "I'll walk home with you." "I don't live anywhere," said Suraj. "My home is not in Pipalnagar. Sometimes I sleep at the temple or at the railway station. In the summer month I sleep in the grass of the municipal park." "Well, wherever it is you stay, let me come with you." We walked together into the town and parted near the bus stop. I returned to my room and tried to do some writing while Suraj went into the bazaar to try selling his wares. We had agreed to meet each other again. I realized that Suraj was an epileptic, but there was nothing unusual about his being an orphan and a refugee. I liked his positive attitude to life. Most people in Pipalnagar were resigned to their circumstances, but he was ambitious. I also liked his gentleness, his quiet voice, and the smile that flickered across his face regardless of whether he was sad or happy. The temperature had touched 110 Fahrenheit, and the small streets of Pipalnagar were empty. To walk barefoot on the scorching pavements was possible only for the laborers whose feet had developed several hard layers of protective skin. And now even these hardy men lay stretched out in the shade provided by trees and buildings. I hadn't written anything into weeks, and though 1 or 2 small payments were due from a Delhi newspaper, I could think of no substantial amount that was likely to come my way in the near future. I decided that I would dash off a couple of articles that same night and post them the following morning. Having made this comforting decision, I lay down on the floor in preference to the cot. I like the touch of things, the touch of a cool floor on a hot day, the touch of earth, soft, grassy. Grass was good, especially dew-drenched grass. Wet earth, too, was soft, sensuous and smelt nice, splashing through puddles and streams. I slept and dreamt of a cool, clear stream in a forest glade where I bathed in gay abandon. A little further downstream was another bather. I hailed him, expecting to see Suraj, but when the bather turned I found that it was my landlord's pot-bellied rent collector, holding an accounts ledger in his hands. This woke me up, and for the remainder of the day I worked feverishly at my articles. Next morning, when I opened the door, I found Suraj asleep at the top of the steps. His tray lay at the bottom of the steps. He woke up as soon as I touched his shoulder. "Have you been sleeping here all night?" I asked. "Why didn't you come in?" "It was very late," said Suraj. "I didn't want to disturb you. Someone could have stolen your things while you were asleep." "Oh, I sleep quite lightly. Besides, I have nothing of great value. But I came here to ask you a favor." "You need money?" He laughed. "Do all your friends mean money when they ask for favors?" "No. I want you to take your meal with me tonight." "But where? You have no place of your own and it would be too expensive in a restaurant." "In your room," said Suraj. "I shall bring the meat and vegetable and cook them here." "Do you have a cooker?" "I think so," I said, scratching my head in some perplexity. "I will have to look for it." Suraj brought a chicken for dinner, a luxury, one to be indulged in only 2 or 3 times a year. He had bought the bird for 7 rupees, which was cheap. We spiced it and roasted it on a spittle. "I wish we could do this more often," I said as I dug my teeth into the soft flesh of a second leg. "We could do it at least once a month if we worked hard," said Suraj. "You know how to work. You work from morning to evening and then you work again. But you are a writer. That is different. You have to wait for the right moment." I laughed. "Moods and moments are for geniuses." "No, it's really a matter of working hard, and I'm just plain lazy, to tell you the truth." "Perhaps you are writing the wrong things. Perhaps. I wish I could do something else. Even if I repaired bicycle tires, I'd make more money." "Then why don't you repair bicycle tires?" "Oh, I would rather be a bad writer than a good repairer of cycle tires." I brightened up. "I could go into business, though. Do you know I once owned a vegetable stall?" "Wonderful. When was that?" "A couple of months ago. But it failed after 2 days." "Then you are not good at business. Let us think of something else. I can tell fortunes with cards. There are already too many fortune tellers in Pipalnagar. Then we won't talk of fortunes. And you must sleep here tonight. It is better than sleeping on the roadside." At noon, when the shadows shifted and crossed the road, a band of children rushed down the empty street, shouting and waving their satchels. They had been at their desks from early morning, and now, despite the hot sun, they would have their fling while their elders slept on string charpoys beneath leafy neem trees. On the soft sand near the riverbed, boys wrestled or played leapfrog. At alley corners, where tall buildings shaded narrow passages, the favorite game was gulli danda. The gulli, a small piece of wood, about 4 inches long, sharpened to a point at each end, is struck with the danda, a short, stout stick. A player is allowed 3 hits, and his score is the distance, in danda lengths, he hits the gulli. Boys who were experts at the game sent the gulli flying far down the road, sometimes into a shop or through a window pane, which resulted in confusion, loud invective, and a dash for cover. A game for both children and young men was kabaddi. This is a game that calls for good breath control and much agility. It is also known in different parts of India as hututu, koko, and atyapatya. Ramu, Deep Chand's younger brother, excelled at this game. He was the Pipalnagar Kabaddi champion. The game is played by 2 teams, consisting of 8 or 9 members each, who face each other across a dividing line. Each side in turn sends out one of its players into the opponent's area. This person has to keep on saying Kabaddi, Kabaddi, very fast and without taking a second breath. If he returns to his side after touching an opponent, that opponent is dead and out of the game. If, however, he is caught and cannot struggle back to his side while still holding his breath, he is dead. Ramu, who was also a good wrestler, knew all the Kabaddi holds and was particularly good at capturing opponents. He had vitality and confidence, rare things in Pipalnagar. He wanted to go into the army after finishing school. A happy choice, I thought. Suraj did not know if his parents were dead or alive. He had literally lost them when he was 6. His father had been a farmer, a dark, unfathomable man who spoke little, thought perhaps even less, and was vaguely aware he had a son. A weak boy given to introspection and dawdling at the river bank when he should have been helping in the fields. Suraj's mother had been a subdued, silent woman, frail and consumptive. Her husband seemed to expect that she would not live long, but Suraj did not know if she was living or dead. He had lost his parents at Amritsar railway station in the days of the partition, when trains coming across the border from Pakistan disgorged themselves of thousands of refugees or pulled into the station half empty, drenched with blood and littered with corpses. Suraj and his parents were lucky to escape one of these massacres. Had they travelled on an earlier train, which they had tried desperately to catch, they might have been killed. Suraj was clinging to his mother's sari while she tried to keep up with her husband, who was elbowing his way through the frightened, bewildered throng of refugees. Suraj collided with a burly Sikh and lost his grip on the sari. The Sikh had a long curved sword at his waist, and Suraj stared up at him in awe and fascination, at the man's long hair, which had fallen loose, at his wild black beard, and at the bloodstains on his white shirt. The Sikh pushed him aside, and when Suraj looked round for his mother, she was not to be seen. She was hidden from him by a mass of restless bodies, all pushing in different directions. He could hear her calling his name, and he tried to force his way through the crowd in the direction of her voice, but he was carried the other way. At night, when the platform was empty, he was still searching for his mother. Eventually, the police came and took him away. They looked for his parents but without success, and finally they sent him to a home for orphans. Many children lost their parents at about the same time. Suraj stayed at the orphanage for 2 years, and when he was 8 and felt himself a man, he ran away. He worked for some time as a helper in a tea shop. But when he started having epileptic fits, the shopkeepers asked him to leave, and the boy found himself on the streets, begging for a living. He begged for a year, moving from one town to the next and ending up finally at Pipalnagar. By then he was 12 and really too old to beg. But he had saved some money, and with it he bought a small stock of combs, buttons, cheap perfumes and bangles, and converting himself into a mobile shop, went from door to door selling his wares. Pipalnagar is a small town, and there was no house which Suraj hadn't visited. Everyone knew him. Some had offered him food and drink, and the children liked him because he often played on a small flute when he went on his rounds. Suraj came to see me quite often, and when he stayed late, he slept in my room, curling up on the floor and sleeping fitfully. He would always leave early in the morning before I could get him anything to eat. Should I go to Delhi, Suraj? I asked him one evening. Why not? In Delhi, there are many ways of making money and spending it too. Why don't you come with me? After my exams, perhaps. Not now. Well, I can wait. I don't want to live alone in a big city. In the meantime, write your book. All right, I will try. We decided we could try to save a little money from Suraj's earnings and my own occasional payments from newspapers and magazines. Even if we were to give Delhi only a few days' trail, we would need money to live on. We managed to put away 20 rupees 1 week, but withdrew it the next when a friend, Pipalnagar, asked for a loan to repair his cycle rickshaw. He returned the money in 3 installments, but we could not save any of it. Pipalnagar and Deep Chand also had plans for going to Delhi. Pipalnagar wanted to own his own scooter rickshaw. Deep Chand dreamt of a swank barbershop in the capital. One day Suraj and I hired bicycles and rode out of Pipalnagar. It was a hot, sunny morning, and we were perspiring after we had gone 2 miles. But a fresh wind sprang up suddenly, and we could smell the rain in the air though there were no clouds to be seen. "Let us go where there are no people at all," said Suraj. "I am a little tired of people. I see too many of them all day." We got down from our cycles and, pushing them off the road, took a path through a paddy field and then a path through a field of young madge. And in the distance we saw a tree, a crooked tree, growing beside a well. I do not even today know the name of that tree. I had never seen its kind before. It had a crooked trunk, crooked branches, and it was clothed in thick, broad crooked leaves, like the leaves on which food is served in bazaars. In the trunk of the tree was a large hole, and when I set my cycle down with a crash, 2 green parrots flew out of the hole and went dipping and swerving across the fields. There was grass around the well, cropped short by grazing cattle, so we sat in the shade of the crooked tree and Suraj untied the red cloth in which he had brought our food. We ate our bread and vegetable curry. And meanwhile the parrots returned to the tree. "Let us come here every week," said Suraj, stretching himself out on the grass. It was a drowsy day, the air humid, and he soon fell asleep. I was aware of different sensations. I heard a cricket singing in the tree, the cooing of pigeons which lived in the walls of the old well, the soft breathing of Suraj, a rustling in the leaves of the tree, the distant drone of the bees. I smelled the grass and the old bricks around the well, and the promise of rain. When I opened my eyes, I saw dark clouds on the horizon. Suraj was still sleeping, his arms thrown across his face to keep the glare out of his eyes. As I was thirsty, I went to the well and, putting my shoulders to it, turned the wheel very slowly, walking around the well 4 times, while cool, clean water gushed out over the stones and along the channel to the fields. I drank from one of the trays, and the water tasted sweet. The deeper the wells, the sweeter the water. Suraj was sitting up now, looking at the sky. "It's going to rain," he said. We pushed our cycles back to the main road and began riding homewards. We were a mile out of Pipalnagar when it began to rain. A lashing wind swept the rain across our faces, but we exulted in it and sang at the top of our voices until we reached the bus stop. Leaving the cycles at the hire shop, we ran up the rickety, swaying steps to my room. In the evening, as the bazaar was lighting up, the rain stopped. We went to sleep quite early, but at midnight I was woken by the moon shining full in my face. A full moon, shedding its light all over Pipalnagar, peeping and prying into every home, washing the empty streets, silvering the corrugated tin roofs. It hung listlessly on the walls and ceilings, waiting for the monsoon rains, which bring out all the insects from their cracks and crannies. One day clouds loomed up on the horizon, growing rapidly into enormous towers. A faint breeze sprang up, bringing with it the first of the monsoon raindrops. This was the moment everyone was waiting for. People ran out of their houses to take in the fresh breeze and the scent of those first few raindrops on the parched, dusty earth. Underground, in their cracks, The insects were moving. Termites and white ants, which had been sleeping through the hot season, emerged from their lairs. And then, on the second or third night of the monsoon, came the great yearly flight of insects into the cool brief freedom of the night. Out of every crack, from under the roots of trees, huge winged ants emerged, at first fluttering about heavily on this the first and last flight of their lives. At night there was only one direction in which they could fly, towards the light, towards the electric bulbs and smoky kerosene lamps throughout Pipalnagar. The street lamp opposite the bus stop, beneath my room, attracted a massive quivering swarm of clumsy termites, which gave the impression of one thick slowly revolving body. This was the hour of the lizards. Now they had their reward for those days of patient waiting. Plying their sticky pink tongues, they devoured the insects as fast as they came. For hours they crammed their stomachs, knowing that such a feast would not be theirs again for another year. How wasteful nature is, I thought. Through the whole hot season the insect world prepares for this flight out of darkness into light, and not one of them survives its freedom. Suraj and I walked barefooted over the cool wet pavements, across the railway lines and the riverbed, until we were not far from the crooked tree. Dotting the landscape were old abandoned brick kilns. When it rained heavily, the hollows made by the kilns filled up with water. Suraj and I found a small tank where we could bathe and swim. On a mound in the middle of the tank stood a ruined hut, formerly inhabited by a watchman at the kiln. We swam and then wrestled on the young green grass. Though I was heavier than Suraj and my chest as sound as a new drum, he had a lot of power in his long wiry arms and legs, and he pinioned me about the waist with his bony knees. And then suddenly, as I strained to press his back to the ground, I felt his body go tense. He stiffened. His thigh jerked against me and his legs began to twitch. I knew that a fit was coming on, but I was unable to get out of his grip. He held me more tightly as the fit took possession of him. When I noticed his mouth working, I thrust the palm of my hand in, sideways to prevent him from biting his tongue. But so violent was the convulsion that his teeth bit into my flesh. I shouted with pain and tried to pull my hand away, but he was unconscious and his jaw was set. I closed my eyes and counted slowly up to 7, and then I felt his muscles relax, and I was able to take my hand away. It was bleeding a little, but I bound it in a handkerchief before Suraj fully regained consciousness. He didn't say much as we walked back to town. He looked depressed and weak, but I knew it wouldn't take long for him to recover his usual good spirits. He did not notice that I kept my hand out of sight, and only after he had returned from classes that night did he notice the bandage and asked what happened. "Do you want to make some money?" asked Pitambar, bursting into the room like a festive cracker. "I do," I said. "What do we have to do for it?" asked Suraj, striking a cautious note. "Oh, nothing. Carry a banner and walk in front of a procession." "Why?" "Don't ask me. Some political stunt." "Which party?" "I don't know." "Who cares? All I know is that they are paying ₹2 a day to anyone who will carry a flag or banner. We don't need ₹2 that badly," I said. "And you can make more than that in a day with your rickshaw." "True, but they're paying me 5. They're fixing a loudspeaker to my rickshaw, and one of the party's men will sit in it and make speeches as we go along. Come on, it will be fun. No banners for us," I said, "but we may come along and watch." And we did watch when, later that morning, the procession passed along our street. It was a ragged procession of about 100 people shouting slogans. Some of them were children, and some of them were men who did not know what it was all about, but all joined in the slogan shouting. We didn't know much about it either, because though the man in Pitambar's rickshaw was loud and eloquent, his loudspeaker was defective, with the result that his words were punctuated with squeaks and an airy whining sound. Pitambar looked up and saw us standing on the balcony and gave us a wave and a wide grin. We decided to follow the procession at a discreet distance. It was a protest march against something or other. We never did manage to find out the details. The destination was the municipal office, and by the time we got there, the crowd had increased to 200 or 300 persons. Some roadies had now joined in, and things began to get out of hand. The man in the rickshaw continued his speech. Another man standing on a wall was making a speech, and someone from the municipal office was confronting the crowd and making a speech of his own. A stone was thrown, then another. From a sprinkling of stones, it soon became a shower of stones. And then some police constables, who had been standing by watching the fun, were ordered into action. They ran at the crowd where it was thinnest, brandishing stout sticks. We were caught up in the stampede that followed. A stone, flung no doubt at a policeman, was badly aimed and struck me on the shoulder. Suraj pulled me down a side street. Looking back, we saw Pitambar's cycle rickshaw lying on its side in the middle of the road, but there was no sign of Pitambar. Later, he turned up in my room, with a cut over his left eyebrow which was bleeding freely. Suraj washed the cut, and I poured iodine over it. Pitambar did not flinch, and covered it with sticking plaster. The cut was quite deep and should have had stitches. But Pitambar was superstitious about hospitals, saying he knew very few people to come out of them alive. He was of course thinking of the Pipalnagar hospital, so he acquired a scar on his forehead. It went rather well with his demonic good looks. See you in the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Hello friends, welcome to our story podcast. Let's begin the story. Bus Stop, Pipalnagar Part 2 by Ruskin Bond. Thank God for the monsoon, said Suraj. We won't have any more demonstrations on the roads until the weather improves. And until the rain stopped, Pipalnagar was fresh and clean and alive. The children ran naked out of their houses and romped through the streets. The gutters overflowed, and the road became a mountain stream, coursing merrily towards the bus stop. At the bus stop there was confusion. Newly arrived passengers, surrounded on all sides by a sea of mud and rain water, were met by scores of tongas and cycle rickshaws, each jostling the other trying to cater to the passengers. As a result, only half found conveyances, while the other half found themselves knee-deep in Pipalnagar mud. Pipalnagar mud has a quality all its own, and it is not easily removed or forgotten. Only buffaloes love it because it is soft and squelchy. Two parts of it is thick sticky clay which seems to come alive at the slightest touch, clinging tenaciously to human flesh. Feet sink into it and have to be wrenched out. Fingers become webbed. Get it into your hair, and there is nothing you can do except go to Deep Chand and have your head shaved. London has its fog, Paris its sewers, Pipalnagar its mud. Pitambar, of course, succeeded in getting as his passenger the most attractive girl to step off the bus, and showed her his skill and daring by taking her to her destination by the longest and roughest road. The rain swirled over the trees and roofs of the town, and the parched earth soaked it up, giving out a fresh smell that came only once a year, the fragrance of quenched earth, that loveliest of all smells. In my room I was battling against the elements, for the door would not close, and the rain swept into the room and soaked my cot. When finally I succeeded in closing the door, I discovered that the roof was leaking and the water was trickling down the walls, running through the dusty designs I had made with my feet. I placed tins and mugs in strategic positions and, satisfied that everything was now under control, sat on the cot to watch the rooftops through the windows. There was a loud banging on the door. It flew open, and there was Suraj standing on the threshold, drenched. Coming in, he began to dry himself while I made desperate efforts to close the door again. "Let's make some tea," he said. Glasses of hot, sweet, milky tea on a rainy day. It was enough to make me feel fresh and full of optimism. We sat on the cot, enjoying the brew. "One day I'll write a book," I said. "Not just a thriller, but a real book. About real people. Perhaps about you and me and Pipalnagar. And then we'll be famous and our troubles will be over and new troubles will begin. I don't mind problems as long as they are new. While you're studying, I'll write my book. I'll start tonight. It is an auspicious time, the first night of the monsoon. A tree must have fallen across the wire somewhere, because the lights would not come on. So I lit a small lamp, and while it spluttered in the steamy darkness, Suraj opened his books and, with one hand on the book, the other playing with his toes, this helped him to concentrate. He began to study. I took the ink down from the shelf and, finding it empty, added a little rainwater to it from one of the mugs. I sat down beside Suraj and began to write. But the pen was no good and made blotches all over the paper. And, although I was full of writing just then, I didn't really know what I wanted to say. So I went out and began pacing up and down the road. There I found Pitambar, a little drunk, very merry, and prancing about in the middle of the road. "What are you dancing for?" I asked. "I'm happy, so I'm dancing," said Pitambar. "And why are you happy?" I asked. "Because I'm dancing," he said. The rain stopped and the neem trees gave out a strong, sweet smell. Flowers in Pipalnagar. Did they exist? As a child, I knew a garden in Lucknow where there were beds of phlox and petunias, and another garden where only roses grew. In the fields around Pipalnagar, thornapple, a yellow buttercup nestling among thorn leaves. But in the Pipalnagar bazaar, there were no flowers except one. A marigold growing out of a crack on my balcony. I had removed the plaster from the base of the plant and filled in a little earth which I watered every morning. The plant was healthy, and sometimes it produced a little orange marigold. Sometimes Suraj plucked a flower and kept it in his tray, among the combs, buttons, and scent bottles. Sometimes he gave the flower to a passing child, once to a small boy who immediately tore it to shreds. Suraj was back on his rounds, as his exams were over. Whenever he was tired of going from house to house, Suraj would sit beneath a shady banyan or peepal tree, put his tray aside, and take out his flute. The haunting notes traveled down the road in the afternoon stillness, drawing children to him. They would sit beside him and be very quiet when he played, because there was something melancholic and appealing about the tunes. Suraj sometimes made flutes out of pieces of bamboo, but he never sold them. He would give them to the children he liked. He would sell almost anything, but not flutes. Suraj sometimes played the flute at night when he lay awake, unable to sleep. But even though I slept, I could hear the music in my dreams. Sometimes he took his flute with him to the crooked tree and played for the benefit of the birds. The parrots made harsh noise in response and flew away. Once, when Suraj was playing his flute to a small group of children, He had a fit. The flute fell from his hands, and he began to roll about in the dust on the roadside. The children became frightened and ran away, but they did not stay away for long. The next time they heard the flute, they came to listen as usual.
12.
It was Lord Krishna's birthday, and the rain came down as heavily as it is said to have done on the day Krishna was born. Krishna is the best beloved of all the gods. Young mothers laugh or weep as they read or hear the pranks of his boyhood. Young men pray to be as tall and as strong as Krishna was when he killed King Kamsa's elephant and Kamsa's wrestlers. Young girls dream of a lover as daring as Krishna to carry them off in a war chariot. Grown-up men envy the wisdom and statesmanship with which he managed the affairs of his kingdom. The rain came so unexpectedly that it took everyone by surprise. In seconds, people were drenched, and within minutes, the street was flooded. The temple tank overflowed. The railway lines disappeared, and the old wall near the bus stop shivered and silently fell. The sound of its collapse drowned in the downpour. A naked young man with a dancing bear cavorted in the middle of the vegetable market. Pitambar's rickshaw churned through the floodwater while he sang lustily as he worked wading knee-deep down the road. I saw the roadside vendors salvaging whatever they could. Plastic toys, cabbages and utensils floated away and were seized by urchins. The water had risen to the level of the shop fronts and floors were awash. Deep Chand and Ramu, with the help of a customer, were using buckets to bail the water out of their shop. The rain stopped as suddenly as it had begun and the sun came out. The water began to find an outlet, flooding other low-lying areas, and a paper boat came sailing between my legs. Next morning, the morning on which the result of Suraj's examinations were due, I rose early. The first time I ever got up before Suraj, and went down to the news agency. A small crowd of students had gathered at the bus stop, joking with each other and hiding their nervousness with a show of indifference. There were not many passengers on the first bus, and there was a mad grab for newspapers as the bundle landed with a thud on the pavement. Within half an hour, the newsboy had sold all his copies. It was the best day of the year for him. I went through the columns relating to Pipalnagar, but I couldn't find Suraj's roll number on the list of successful candidates. I had the number on a slip of paper, and I looked at it again to make sure I had compared it correctly with the others. Then I went through the newspaper once more. When I returned to the room, Suraj was sitting on the doorstep. I didn't have to tell him he had failed. He knew by the look on my face. I sat down beside him, and we said nothing for some time. "Never mind," Suraj said eventually. "I will pass next year." I realized I was more depressed than he was and that he was trying to console me. "If only you'd had more time," I said. "I have plenty of time now. Another year. And you will have time to finish your book. And then we can go away together. Another year of Pipalnagar won't be so bad. As long as I have your friendship, almost everything can be tolerated." He stood up, the tray hanging from his shoulders. "What would you like to buy?" Another year of Pipalnagar. But it was not to be. A short time later, I received a letter from the editor of a newspaper, calling me to Delhi for an interview. My friends insisted that I should go. Such an opportunity would not come again. But I needed a shirt. The few I possessed were either frayed at the collars or torn at the shoulders. I hadn't been able to afford a new shirt for over a year, and I couldn't afford one now. Struggling writers weren't expected to dress very well, but I felt in order to get the job, I would need both a haircut and a clean shirt. Where was I to go to get a shirt? Suraj generally wore an old red striped t-shirt. He washed it every second evening, and by morning it was dry and ready to wear again. But it was tight even on him. He did not have another. Besides, I needed something white, something respectable. I went to Deep Chand, who had a collection of shirts. He was only too glad to lend me one. But they were all brightly colored, pinks, purples and magentas. No editor was going to be impressed by a young writer in a pink shirt. They looked fine on Deep Chand, but he had no need to look respectable. Finally, Pitambar came to my rescue. He didn't bother with shirts himself, except in winter, but he was able to borrow a clean white shirt from a guard at the jail, who would got it from the relative of a convict in exchange for certain favors. "This shirt will make you look respectable," said Pitambar. To be respectable. What an adventure. Freedom. The moment the bus was out of Pipalnagar and the fields opened out on all sides, I knew that I was free, that I always had been free. Only my own weakness, hesitation, and the habits that had grown around me had held me back. All I had to do was to sit in a bus and go somewhere. I sat near the open window of the bus and let the cool breeze from the fields play against my face. Herons and snipe waded among the lotus roots in flat green ponds. Blue jays swooped around telegraph poles. Children jumped naked into the canals that wound through the fields. Because I was happy, it seemed to me that everyone else was happy. The driver, the conductor, the passengers, the farmers in the fields and those driving bullock carts. When two women behind me started quarreling over their seats, I helped to placate them. Then I took a small girl on my knee and pointed out camels, buffaloes, vultures, and pariah dog. 6 hours later, the bus crossed the bridge over the swollen Jamuna River, passed under the walls of the great red fort built by a Mughal emperor, and entered the old city of Delhi. I found it strange to be in a city again, after several years in Pipalnagar. It was a little frightening, too. I felt like a stranger. No one was interested in me. In Pipalnagar, people wanted to know each other, or at least to know about one another. In Delhi, no one cared who you were or where you came from like big cities almost everywhere. It was prosperous but without a heart. After a day and a night of loneliness, I found myself wishing that Suraj had accompanied me, wishing that I was back in Pipalnagar. But when the job was offered to me, at a starting salary of 300 rupees per month, a princely sum, compared to what I had been making on my own, I did not have the courage to refuse it. After accepting the job, which was to commence in a week's time, I spent the day wandering through the bazaars, down the wide shady roads of the capital, resting under the jamun trees, and thinking all the time of what I would do in the months to come. I slept at the railway waiting room, and all night long I heard the shunting and whistling of engines which conjured up visions of places with sweet names like Kumbakonam, Krishnagiri, Polonnarurva. I dreamt of palm-fringed beaches and inland lagoons, of the echoing chambers of deserted cities, red sandstone and white marble, of temples in the sun, and elephants crossing wide slow-moving rivers. Pitambar was on the platform when the train steamed into the Pipalnagar station in the early hours of a damp September morning. I waved to him from the carriage window and shouted that everything had gone well. But everything was not well here. When I got off the train, Pitambar told me that Suraj had been ill, that he'd a fit on a lonely stretch of road the previous afternoon and had lain in the sun for over an hour. Pitambar had found him, suffering from heat stroke, and brought him home. When I saw him, he was sitting upon the string bed drinking hot tea. He looked pale and weak, but his smile was reassuring. "Don't worry," he said. "I will be all right." He was bad last night, said Pitambar. He had a fever and kept talking, as in a dream. But what he says is true. He is better this morning. Thanks to Pitambar, said Suraj. It is good to have friends. Come with me to Delhi, Suraj. I said. I have got a job now. You can live with me and attend a school regularly. It is good for friends to help each other, said Suraj. But only after I have passed my exam will I join you in Delhi. I made myself this promise. Poor Pipalnagar. Nobody wants to stay here. Will you be sorry to leave? Yes, I will be sorry. A part of me will still be here. Deep Chand was happy to know that I was leaving. I'll follow you soon, he said. There is money to be made in Delhi, cutting hair. Girls are keeping it short these days, but men are growing it long.
True.
So I shall open a barber shop for ladies and a beauty salon for men. Ramu can attend to the ladies. Ramu winked at me in the mirror. He was still at the stage of teasing girls on their way to school or college. The snip of Deep Chand's scissors made me sleepy as I sat in his chair. His fingers beat a rhythmic tattoo on my scalp. It was my last haircut in Pipalnagar, and Deep Chand did not charge me for it. I promised to write as soon as I had settled down in Delhi. The next day when Suraj was stronger, I said, Come, let us go for a walk and visit our crooked tree. Where is your flute? Suraj, I don't know. Let us look for it. We searched the room and our belongings for the flute but could not find it. It must have been left on the roadside, said Suraj. Never mind. I will make another. I could picture the flute lying in the dust on the roadside, and somehow this made me feel sad. But Suraj was full of high spirits as we walked across the railway lines and through the fields. The rains are over, he said, kicking off his chappal and lying down on the grass. You can smell the autumn in the air. Somehow, it makes me feel light-hearted. Yesterday I was sad, and tomorrow I might be sad again. But today I know that I am happy. I want to live on and on. One lifetime cannot satisfy my heart. A day in a lifetime, I said. I'll remember this day. The way the sun touches us, the way the grass bends, the smell of this leaf as I crush it. At 6 every morning the first bus arrives, and the passengers alight, looking sleepy and disheveled, and rather discouraged by their first sight of Pipalnagar. When they have gone their various ways, the bus is driven into the shed. Cows congregate at the dustbin, and the pavement dwellers come to life, stretching their tired limbs on the hard stone steps. I carry the bucket up the steps to my room and bathe for the last time on the open balcony. In the villages, the buffaloes are wallowing in green ponds, while naked urchins sit astride them, scrubbing their backs, and a crow or waterbird perches on their glistening necks. The parrots are busy in the crooked tree, and a slim green snake basks in the sun on our island near the brickle. In the hills, the mists have lifted and the distant mountains are fringed with snow. It is autumn, and the rains are over. The earth meets the sky in one broad, bold sweep. A land of thrusting hills, terraced hills, wood-covered and vine-swept. Mountains where the gods speak gently to the lonely. Hills of green grass and grey rock, misty at dawn, hazy at noon, molten at sunset, where fierce fresh torrents rush to the valleys below. A quiet land of fields and ponds, shaded by ancient trees and ringed with palms, where sacred rivers are touched by temples, where temples are touched by southern seas. This is the land I should write about. Pipalnagar should be forgotten. I should turn aside from it to sing instead of the splendors of exotic places. But only yesterdays are truly splendid. And there are other singers, sweeter than I, to sing of tomorrow. I can only write of today, of Pipalnagar, where I have lived and loved. See you in the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.